Hey guys. Well, that time again. Sorry, I just wanted to play a little more of that track there. I usually try to talk over it, but hey, welcome again. Episode 64 of Sports and Shorts of Sorts. It's your boy Ren City doing what we do every week, jumping into the week of sports, ending with some shorts about me and what's going on with me. But hey, just like every episode, we honor the people that wore the jerseys that coincide with the episode number. Being episode 64, let's jump right to it. And much like many of the jerseys in this kind of neighborhood, number 64 starting in the NFL. We jump in the time machine to go to the unique guard kicker hybrid combo. That's right, Jerry Kramer. Kramer played college football with the University of Idaho, which led to the Packers selecting him in the fourth round of the 1958 NFL draft. Kramer started every game his rookie season, but the Packers struggled, finishing 1-10-1, worst record in the NFL. Next season, they hired some guy named Vince Lombardi. You might have heard of him. Changed the entire landscape in Green Bay. Under Lombardi, Kramer thrived. He was part of some championship teams in Green Bay. The Packers won 5 NFL championships, including 2 of those, which led to the first 2 Super Bowls. Both were which won by my Packers as well. Super Bowl 1 over the Chiefs and Super Bowl 2 over the Raiders. During his 11-year NFL career, all spent with the Packers, by the way, Kramer picked up tons of accolades. 5 first-team All-Pros, 2 second-team All-Pros, 3 Pro Bowls, selected to the NFL 1960s All-Decade Team, and the NFL's 50th anniversary team. The Packers honored Kramer by inducting him into their Hall of Fame. Kramer was also inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His number 64 is also retired by his alma mater. Despite his great success, Kramer battled lots of injuries, terrible injuries, leading to 22 surgeries in 11 seasons, including a colostomy, which Kramer described as a horror movie that hasn't been made yet. In retirement, Kramer has also written a few books, including a collaboration with Dick Schaap on his first book, The Best-Selling Instant Replay. Kramer then wrote a second book, Farewell to Football, after his former coach, Vince Lombardi, passed away from cancer in 1970. Kramer edited Lombardi Winning is the Only Thing, a great offensive lineman with a knack for penmanship, by the way. Staying with the NFL, but sounding like an NBA backcourt, we're sticking with guards. Excuse me. The next number 64 on our list is offensive lineman Randall McDaniel. He was a stud at Arizona State, earning All-American accolades as well as first-team All-Pac-10. He was a member of the Sun Devils teams that won the Rose Bowl and the Freedom Bowl, leading to McDaniel getting drafted 19th overall in the 1988 draft by the Vikings. He still holds the fastest 100-meter dash time ever among offensive linemen at 10.64 seconds. Big men don't usually move that fast. Once Randall McDaniel got the starting spot in 90, he started every Vikings regular season game from 1990 to 1999, as well as an astounding 12 straight Pro Bowl appearances. Over that time frame, McDaniel made 7 first-team All-Pros, 2 second-team All-Pros, named in the NFL 1990s All-Decade Team, as well as the NFL 100th Anniversary Team. After spending his entire career with the Vikings, McDaniel wrapped up his career with a few seasons in Tampa Bay. He would then sign a one-day contract to retire a Viking. McDaniel was inducted into the Vikings Ring of Honor, and he was also named one of the 50 greatest Vikings. He was named to the Vikings 40th anniversary team, and Randall McDaniel was inducted to the College and Pro Football Halls of Fame, one of the best ever to play guard in the NFL. We'll jump back in that time machine of mine for this number 64. Going on the defensive side of things to talk about former NFL linebacker Dave Wilcox. He played college football with the Oregon Ducks. Great play there, got him drafted in 2 different leagues. 64, he was selected in the 6th round of the AFL draft by the Houston Oilers, and the 3rd round, the NFL draft by the 49ers. The big linebacker decided to join the latter, spending his entire career with the 49ers, earning 2 first-team All-Pros, 2 second-team All-Pros, and 7 Pro Bowls, an intimidating force that struck fear into the opponents. He'd never get to a Super Bowl, but he was part of some really good San Francisco defenses, and after retiring from the game, he was inducted into the 49ers Hall of Fame and inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Fortunately, Wilcox passed away at the age of 80 just last year, shortly after having undergone heart surgery. A name you don't hear about a lot in the NFL, David Wilcox, even though if you do hear about him, you probably hear the Canadian rock musician, so I can see the confusion there. Wrapping up the NFL segment of the jersey mentions, the last 64 from the NFL is a youngster by these terms, a 24-year-old Tyler Linderbaum. He was a beast at Iowa. where he was twice named first team All Big Ten. His senior season, he was Big Ten offensive lineman player of the year, unanimous All American, also picking up the Remington Award, or an award given out to the best center in college football. It's a pretty big accolades, leading to the Ravens drafting him 25th overall in the 2022 draft. He'd start every game for the Ravens as a rookie, earning all rookie teams along the way. In his second season, which was last season, Linderbaum made his first career Pro Bowl, and I imagine he's got many more in his future. Solid guy. Leaving the football field for the baseball diamond, we start with number 64, right-handed pitcher Dean Kremer, first Israeli drafted by an MLB team. After playing at San Joaquin Delta College, he transferred to UNLV, where he'd pitch for the Rebels. He's initially drafted by the Padres in the 2015 MLB draft, but decided to stay in college to finish his commitment to UNLV. And the next season, he'd get drafted by the Dodgers in the 14th round of the MLB draft, playing in the minor leagues but never getting the call-up. He was involved in a trade with the Dodgers to acquire Manny Machado. After playing more time in the minor leagues, he'd finally get the call to the majors and make his debut for the Orioles in 2020. Dean Kremer has been a consistently good pitcher for the Orioles, although this season he's struggled a bit compared to his last few seasons. So the thing with baseball, it's a long season, lots of times for him to try to upgrade that. And sticking with baseball, the next 64 on our list is another current player, the 25-year-old Puerto Rican infielder Jose Miranda. He was drafted by the Twins in the second round of the 2016 MLB draft, making his minor league debut the following season. He played more seasons in the minor leagues, but missed out on the 2020 season due to the cancellation because of the COVID-19 virus. Following season, he'd return and light it up, winning the Twins Minor League Player of the Year. In the following season, he was named to the Twins 40-man roster. He'd do damage right away, winning Rookie of the Month for July of 2022. But the following season, he'd deal with injuries. But he's bounced back a bit this season. After starting in the minor leagues, he's really been playing well for the Twins. I'm expecting him to even get better as the season progresses. And he's kind of got a famous relative, his cousin Lin-Manuel Miranda. You might know him from the theatrical work in Hamilton. Our last MLB mention to wear the 64, another current player, San Francisco Giants right-handed pitcher Sean Hell. It's fitting that Hell plays for the Giants because he sort of is a giant. The 6'11 pitcher is tied with John Rauch as the tallest players in Major League Baseball history. He played college baseball for Kentucky, and as a sophomore, he was named the SEC Pitcher of the Year. Successful college career led to the Giants selecting him in the second round of the 2018 draft. He started his career in the minor leagues and received a call to the big show in 2022, but after some more minor league assignment, he's been called up again for the Giants, pitching in a reliever role, intimidating hitters with his giant stature. Leaving the baseball diamond for the hockey rink, the first 64 on our list was Finnish-born Michael Granlund. He started playing professionally in his native Finland, which led to the Minnesota Wild selecting him 9th overall in the 2010 NHL entry draft. After playing some more time in Finland, there'd be a debate over who had the rights to Granlund. Dynamo Minsk of the KHL claimed they drafted Granlund before Minnesota. After Granlund fulfilled his mandatory military service requirements, which is required by Finnish men, you might have remembered Lauri Markkanen doing it from the NBA, but he'd signed a deal to join with the Wild. Before he could start, the league had a lockout, so Granlund played in the AHL for the Houston Aeros. But once the lockout ended, Granlund got the call to play for the Wild. He had some productive seasons, and although he dealt with some injuries, he did a lot to work his way up to the top line, signing a 3-year deal with the Wild. But near the end of that deal, he'd get shipped off to the Predators. It would take a few seasons to put up some of the numbers he had in Minnesota, and Granlund would try to stay with the Preds, but in 2023 he was traded to the Penguins. And after 21 games in Pittsburgh, he was shipped off to the San Jose Sharks, where he'd finish the season. He put up decent numbers on a struggling Sharks team, and he's also represented Finland on numerous occasions, for winning a bronze medal at the 2014 Sochi Olympics and 2 gold medals at the World Championships, one in 2011, one in 2012, as well as a silver in 2016. A fantastic player who has a younger brother, Marcus Granlund, who plays professionally in Europe and was mentioned in episode 60's Jersey Mentions. We'll go to another 64, staying on the hockey ice here, I guess, in the hockey rink. Talking about American hockey player Tyler Mott. He played college hockey at the University of Michigan, where he had a very successful collegiate career, leading him getting drafted 121st overall by the Blackhawks in the 2013 NHL entry draft. He played a lot with the AHL affiliate, the Rockford Ice Hogs, where he'd then get called to play for the Blackhawks, but picked up an injury. And after he returned from injury, his play dropped. He go back to the minor leagues. He was part of a big trade going to Columbus. where he'd spend more time in the AHL before getting the call up to the NHL again. But again, he'd get traded, this time to Vancouver, where he probably had some of his best years. But then he was traded to the Rangers, where he wore a different number for the first time in his career. Then signing with the Ottawa Senators, where he also had a different number. And after a brief time with the Rangers, he'd signed with the Lightning, where he played last year, and was reunited with the number 64 jersey. He had a decent season with the Lightning, but as it was a one-year deal, it's unsure where Mott will end up next season, and maybe Tampa Bay will bring him back. The next 64 on the list, the young defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets, Logan Stanley. He lit it up playing for the Windsor Spitfires, and which led to the Jets selecting him 18th overall in the 2016 draft. After being drafted, Stanley would go on to win the Memorial Cup with the Spitfires, and the following season he'd get traded to the Kitchener Rangers, where he finished his OHL career. Once he joined the Jets, he'd spend some time with the AHL affiliate Manitoba Moose, but since getting the call-up again, he's been a figure on the defensive end and was part of the reason the Jets had a successful season this past year. Next 64 on our list is Czech-born David Kampf. He started playing professionally in his native Czechia. After some great seasons there, he'd opt out of his contract over there to play with the Blackhawks and spending time with their AHL affiliate, the Rockford Ice Hogs. A lot of Ice Hogs talk this podcast. Kampf would make his debut with the Blackhawks, being a consistent forward on the team for a few seasons before joining the Toronto Maple Leafs. There he kind of had his best seasons, his most productive, signing a contract extension this past season. He's also represented Czechia on the international level, playing at the World Juniors as well as the World Championships. He never medaled at the junior level, but won bronze with the then Czech Republic at the 2022 championships. But then the Czech Republic made a change to their name in 2016, which was more publicized in 2023, and the world began using Czechia more. And after the Leafs were knocked out of this year's playoffs, Kampf joined Czechia teammates in the 2024 championships in his native land. And as mentioned last episode, Czechia won the World Championships. Excuse me, but I'm expecting David Kampf to up his game even more next season under new Leafs head coach Craig Berube. Wrapping up the 64 section, I have to mention the number 1 overall pick by the Edmonton Oilers. Not everyone likes this guy. Russian winger Nail Yakupov. 30-year-old is out of the NHL and playing back in his native land in the KHL. He was selected first overall by the Oilers with tons of hype after dominating in the NHL with the Sarnia Sting. Came over from Russia to play in the OHL as he thought it would be his best path to the NHL, and he was right. He was drafted first, like I said, in the 2012 NHL draft. They signed him to a 3-year entry-level contract. However, the lockout was going on. But instead of going back to the OHL, Yakupov wanted to go with the KHL and play for... I'm going to try this here. Neftekimik Nichimnex. I butchered that. But anyway, he played a few games over there before the IHF declared he wasn't eligible to play there. He was under contract with the Oilers, required to play in the CHL. However, a few days later, Hockey Canada decided Yakupov was free to play in Russia, determining Yakupov had no independent legal advice when at the age of 17 he signed that contract. So he returned to Russia until the lockout ended, and he came over to Edmonton. He wanted to wear 10 in honor of Russian legend Pavel Bure, but Sean Horkoff had the number. So Yakupov went with 64, as it adds up to 10. He showed flashes of why he went number 1 in the draft, recording his first hat trick against the Canucks and finishing second in rookie scoring with 17 goals. Following season, Yakupov continuously fell short of expectations, and the Oilers dealt him to the Blues. The change of scenery seemed to help initially, as Yakupov scored 4 points in his first 6 games, but from there he struggled, and he was a healthy scratch in a bunch of games. After not getting re-signed with the Blues, Yakupov tried to stick it out in the NHL and sign with the Avalanche, but after another disappointing season, he'd go to the KHL, where, like I said, he still plays today. So unfortunately, Yakupov carries that badge of being one of the biggest NHL busts in NHL history. So we'll see what happens there. And another common theme I mentioned at the beginning of the show, NFL, these early 60s, very common in the NFL, especially among the offensive linemen. But in the NBA, not so common. 64, no dice in the NBA. So if you're a youngster looking to make your name for yourself, 64 is available. But anyway, from jerseys to the week that was NHL Playoffs. Mamma mia, the Eastern Conference Finals. During last episode, I joked about how Game 4 of the Rangers-Panthers series would probably go to overtime. Yeah, it happened again. Sam Reinhart would score early in overtime to give Florida the 3-2 win and tie the series up at 2, which went back to the Big Apple. And it was another close one where the Rangers opened the scoring with a shorthanded goal to just have it answered 8 minutes later. And it was 1-1 going into the third. And then in about halfway through the third, Anton Lundell, his shot found the back of the net. Panthers up 2-1. Sam Bennett, empty netter, 3-1. Lafreniere, he scored to make it 3-2 with 50 seconds left, but Panthers took the 3-2 series lead back to Florida. So here we were, Florida, Game 6, Rangers backs against the wall, while the Panthers were looking to return to the finals. Florida got the better start, though. 50 seconds left in the first period. Sam Bennett's one-timer couldn't have been placed any better. Hit that sweet spot, like in between the post and crossbar, banked right down. Wow, what a shot. It seemed like, I know the Rangers' backs were against the wall, but the Panthers seemed the hungrier team here, and they were rewarded when Vladimir Tarasenko scored to put them up 2-0 with just over 10 minutes to go in the third. With the Rangers' net empty, Artemi Panarin would finally score in the series. The Breadman series has been forgetful against the Panthers. Made it 2-1 with a few minutes to go, but that's as close as they got. Panthers hold on to the 2-1 win and win the best of 7 series 4-2, advancing to the Stanley Cup Finals, second year in a row. They're hoping for a better outcome than last year's finals, where they lost to the Avalanche in 5 games. And Paul Maurice made sure his captain, Alexander Barkov, did not touch the Clarence Campbell Bowl after winning the Western Conference Finals. He touched it last year. We know how that went. Tradition. But this will be the third finals appearance for the Panthers. They still have not won a Stanley Cup, so they'll be looking for that. And out east, it seems like the Cup lately has to go through Florida. I mentioned back-to-back years for the Panthers. 3 years in a row before that, the Tampa Bay Lightning made it to the finals. So, yeah, something in the Florida waters. But a tough series for the Rangers. You have to feel for goaltender Igor Shesterkin. He made so many big saves and really was the reason the Rangers were in this series. We'll go out west, where who would the Panthers face in the Stanley Cup Finals? During last week's episode, the Stars were up 2-1 in the series after winning Game 3 in Edmonton. The Oilers did not get the start they were hoping for in Game 4. Wyatt Johnston scoring not even a minute into the game to make it 1-0. Minutes later, Esa Lindell scored to make it 2-0. And just over 5 minutes into the game, Oilers were in a hole. Ryan McLeod picked up an easy goal off a rebound to make it 2-1, and Evan Bouchard scored off a rebound to make it 2-2 going on the first intermission. You almost needed a cigarette after that first period, and I don't even smoke. Later in the second period, Matthias Janmark would score a shorthanded goal for the Oilers, and just seconds later, Draisaitl would score, making it 4-2. Empty netter made it 5-2, and this series was tied up going back to Dallas. And in Dallas, the Oilers seemed to kind of ride the momentum. Late in the first, on the power play, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins would score, giving the Oilers a 1-0 lead going in the intermission. And early in the second, again on the power play, and again, Nugent-Hopkins scored his second of the game, making it 2-0. Philip Broberg would make it 3-0, but Wyatt Johnston would spoil a shutout, but that was the only goal, as Oilers won 3-1, going back to Edmonton for Game 6, and man, was that crowd rocking in Edmonton. The Oilers are one win away from making it back to the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time in nearly 20 years. The Oilers would get an early power play goal, and we would witness magic on the ice. Connor McDavid got the puck and made outrageous moves, going around Dallas Stars like they were pylons before lifting his shot into the net. It was amazing. If you haven't watched that highlight, what do? Check it out. It's amazing. That got a rowdy crowd even rowdier. That almost seemed to spark the Stars, who made Stuart Skinner make some big saves. But the Oilers would get the power play again, and again, McDavid showed off the nice hands, finding Zach Hyman, who scored yet another playoff goal. And the Oilers were up 2-0 in the first period. But man, the Stars were not going down without a fight. They were peppering Skinner like a steak. So many shots. The shot disparity was totally in Dallas's favor. This eventually led to Mason Marchment scoring halfway through the third to cut the lead in half. But the Stars could just not beat Skinner again. Despite being outshot 35-10, the Oilers win Game 5 and advance to the Stanley Cup Finals to take on the Panthers. It will be the first time the Oilers in the finals since 2006, when they lost to the Carolina Hurricanes in 7 games. And the last time the Oilers lifted the trophy was back in 1990. Last time a Canadian team lifted the cup, like everyone says, 1993 when Montreal did it. So this series will be rewarding to one fan base. You're going to be giving a team that's never won it before, or you're going to be giving the cup to a cup-starved country. I can't wait. We've Got to wait a bit for game one as the series opener takes place Saturday, June 8th down in Florida. The beginning of the NHL playoffs, I picked the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup over the New York Rangers. I mean, I almost called the right teams in the final, and I see no reason to go against my choice. I'm really hoping the Oilers beat the Panthers. I'm thinking they'll win it in 6 games, lifting the cup on their home ice. We'll see. Having a look at the points leaders in the playoffs, still has an oily look to it. I mentioned Zach Hyman scoring another playoff goal, his game-winning goal in Game 6. He leads the NHL playoffs with 14 goals now. His teammate Leon Draisaitl tied with second with Dallas's Wyatt Johnston with 10. Florida's Carter Verhaeghe sits in third with 9 goals, still tied with Valeri Nichushkin of the Avalanche, which is just shows you how good Nichushkin was. They were knocked out after 2 rounds, and he was suspended, so he was lighting it up before that. 4 of the top 5 point getters in the playoffs all play for Edmonton. McDavid leading the way with 31, Draisaitl 28. Oilers defenseman Evan Bouchard is 27, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is tied with the first non-Oiler on the list, New York's Vincent Trocheck, with 20. Florida's Matthew Tkachuk sits in 6th with 19. Going to the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League, after Boston beat Minnesota in Game 4, needing double overtime to do it, to send it back to their home ice for a title-clinching Game 5, we didn't know what to expect. But what we did see was a dominating performance by Minnesota. Nicole Hensley, 17 saves, recorded her second shutout in the series and clinched the 5-game series for Minnesota as they won the inaugural PWHL championship, lifting the Walter Cup for the first time in league history. Taylor Heisey was voted the recipient of the Atlanta Colossus Playoff MVP award. She led the PWHL playoffs in goals with 5 and finished tied for first in points with 8. She was chosen first overall by Minnesota in the inaugural PWH draft back in September 2023, and a massive win for Minnesota, a massive win for women's hockey. I didn't catch every single game this season, but the games I did catch, they were pretty good, and this will help the game growing going forward. I have to go to the Memorial Cup, sticking with hockey here. It was a wild build-up to this game, and it went down yesterday with host Saginaw Spirit taking on the powerful London Knights. The Knights had beaten the Spirit recently to clinch the spot in the finals, while Saginaw had to play Moose Jaw, and they pounded the WHL champions 7-1 to advance to the final, get another shot at the Knights. And Saginaw jumped out to an early lead. And then after the Knights, Landon Sim got a 5-minute penalty and a game misconduct, the Spirit would double their lead. They had a third goal early in the second, and they were up 3-0 over the Knights. Halfway through the second period, the Knights would finally get on the board, and it was 3-1 going into the third period. They were barely producing shots, but something must have happened because they had a spark coming into that final frame. 2 goals, not even 3 minutes apart, and this thing all tied up at 3. You could hear the uneasiness of the home crowd. But then, with just seconds left in the game, London went to clear the zone, was kept in, and a wild scramble led to Josh Bloom poking into the net with 22 seconds left. Crowd erupted as the Spirit took the lead again at 4-3. Saginaw held on to the win, winning their first ever Memorial Cup and doing it on their home ice. Saginaw Spirit became the 3rd American team to lift the CHL trophy and the first to do so in 16 years. The American teams this has only happened 5 times. Portland Winterhawks did it twice in 83 and 88. Spokane Chiefs did it in 91 and 2008. Goal scorer in the game, Owen Beck, won the Stafford Smythe Memorial Trophy as the MVP of the Memorial Cup. And London was definitely the favorite coming in. And if they played another 10 times, I'm guessing the London Knights would probably win more. But on this day, it was all Saginaw. Which takes us to the footy world to wrap up some European competition here. And as previewed on last week's episode, the Conference League final was being played in Athens, Greece, with Italian side Fiorentina taking on Greek side Olympiacos. It was the first time a Greek side had ever made a European final, and they had a home field advantage for sure. Despite the rowdiness of the crowd, there weren't too many chances, and this game would require extra time. The extra frame, you could feel the tension rise as the time elapsed, and you felt like this game could go to penalties. As there were tired legs all over the pitch, Olympiacos went on the attack, and Heze's low cross was put into the back of the net by Ayoub El Kabe, the goal machine in this tournament for Olympiacos. Adds another, as his 116th minute goal would prove to be the difference. Olympiacos lift the the Europa Conference League trophy. As I said, first time that a Greek side has ever won a major European competition. I've already read on people online, really a major competition, but yeah, it's worthy of high praise, and I congratulate Olympiacos on the win. Their manager, Jose Luis Mendilibar, lifted the Europa League trophy with Sevilla last season. So back-to-back European trophies for the Spanish manager. Good on him. That was all leading us up to the big one, the UEFA Champions League final. Borussia Dortmund, Real Madrid. The biggest match in European club footy went down. Like I said, Borussia Dortmund looking to end their magical run with a trophy, while Spanish giants Real Madrid were looking to add more hardware to that massive trophy room. At the start of the game, it was all Dortmund. They were getting more of the ball. They looked more likely to score. Füllkrug hit the post in the 23rd minute. That really could have changed things. Attempt after attempt, they could just not find the back of the net. I got to give credit to Madrid keeper Thibaut Courtois. His first Champions League start of the season, he missed most of the season due to injury, and he was the reason Real Madrid was still in this game. Excuse me, but in the second half, it seemed like Real Madrid started to put their influence on the match. Toni Kroos, who was suiting up for Real Madrid for the last time, forced Kobel into a tough save with a beautiful free kick attempt. I mentioned how it was German midfielder Kroos's last match with the club. His compatriot, Marco Reus, was substituted into the match in what would be his last appearance for Borussia Dortmund. He's also leaving the club after 12 seasons. He was only on the field briefly when the game would get its first goal. But unfortunately for Royce, it would be Real Madrid scoring first. From a corner kick, Danny Carvajal would show off his hops and head the ball into the back of the net, giving the Spanish side the 1-0 lead after 74 minutes. Then a ghastly turnover by Dortmund's Matson would lead to Jude Bellingham finding Vinicius Jr., who found the back of the net. Suddenly, it was 2-0 Real Madrid after 83 minutes. Dortmund tried getting back in the game. They looked to score, but VAR called it offsides. Well, not even VAR, the linesman called it. It was pretty blatant, but that's how it would end. Real Madrid winning the Champions League final 2-0, 15th time in their club history, which puts them 8 ahead in the second most successful club in European competition, AC Milan, who have won it 7 times. A clean sheet for Courtois in his return. Nice sending off for Toni Kroos. Kroos joins Luka Modric, Nacho, and goal scorer Danny Carvajal as 6-time Champions League winners. And with the win, manager Carlo Ancelotti became the first and only manager to win the 5 Champions League titles. Disappointment for Dortmund, as they still only have that 1 Champions League trophy to their name, and they'll be in the competition next season, looking to return to the final. Not the sending off for Marco Reus they were hoping for. When the French league wrapped up already, we knew that Clermont Foot and Lorient were getting relegated. Who was joining them? Would Metz join them in relegation, or would they stick around? The team standing in their way was Saint Etienne, a club who finished 3rd in League 2 and were hoping for promotion. Saint Etienne looked the team more likely to score, and Sissoko scored in the 19th minute to put them up 1-0. Metz would answer with Traore equalizing just before halftime, but in the 80th minute, Cardona's header found the back of the net, and Saint Etienne took the first leg 2-1, meaning Metz would host the second leg, and they couldn't have had a worse start to the game. Diallo would come in for a harsh challenge. Yellow card was given. VAR would upgrade it to a red, and just 6 minutes into the match, Metz were now not just a goal down on aggregate, but a man down for the last 84 minutes of the 90. Strangely seemed to spark Metz, though, and in the 17th minute, Camara would score to tie the game up on 2 on aggregate, and minutes later, Metz would get taken down in the box. It's kind of a tough call, but regardless, scorer machine George Mikatadze would score from the spot, making it 2-0 in the match and giving Metz the 3-2 lead on aggregate. But it was short-lived, as only 7 minutes later, from a corner kick, the ball would find its way to Leo Petro, who scored to make it 2-1 in the match, and more importantly, 3-3 on aggregate. Things started to get a little heated as tensions rose in the match. Saint Etienne would score, but VAR deemed a collision between the striker and keeper to be a foul. Again, another rough call, but a call nonetheless. Saint Etienne players showed their displeasure with the ref, causing the home crowd Metz fans to get pissed off and throw things onto the pitch, which caused a brief pause in the match as stadium officials got on the megaphone to plead with fans about stop throwing shit on the pitch. And after all this shenanigans, the game would resume. We'd get no more goals, and we'd go to extra time. The first half of extra time, no goals. But in the 116th minute, with everyone's eyes on penalties, Saint Etienne's Wadji would finish off some nice passing by finding the back of the net, tying the match at 2, but more importantly, putting Saint Etienne up 4-3 on aggregate. A wild ending to a wild match that ended with Saint Etienne earning their way to promotion, while a tired out 10-man side of Metz looked stunned to see they were relegated. And it's going to be a tough go for Metz. We'll probably lose sharpshooter George Makatatse, who will go back to Ajax, I imagine, as he was on loan from the Dutch side. Or if the Dutch club loan him out to a club, they might look to loan him out to someone in a higher division, not League Two. But there was an option for Mets to buy out Mikatadze outright, but I don't think they're going to have the funds with the relegation. And I'm also looking to see what Mikatadze can do for Georgia in Group F this summer of the Euros. But anyway, congrats to Saint Etienne. We'll see them playing in League One next season. And it was only last season they were in danger of getting relegated from League Two. And now they are back in the top division, looking to expand their successful campaign. Serie A promotion playoffs will stick with postseason playoff games in European footy. In Italy, there was a final matchup between Cremonese and Venezia, with the winner earning that last promotion spot to the Italian top division. The first leg, no goals, setting up a second leg with things all squared up. Venezia was hosting Cremonese, and the home team would open the scoring in the 24th minute. Christian Gutierrez's shot somehow got through a series of legs to find the corner of the net, and despite Cremonese's increased pressure, they could not equalize. 1-0 result for Venezia. They move back to Serie A, joining Serie B winners Parma and runner-up Como. We'll stick in Italy because there was still one more game to go down. As mentioned on last episode, there was the makeup game between Fiorentina and Atalanta after Fiorentina's GM Joe Barone had passed away before their match. And these teams have been busy. Atalanta coming off that Europa final win over Leverkusen, followed by a win over Torino. Fiorentina fresh off their Conference League final loss to Olympiacos that I mentioned earlier. But Fiorentina opened the scoring like 6 minutes in. Andrea Bellotti would meet a cross and he'd find the back of the net. But 6 minutes later, the on-fire Ademola Lookman would get a pass and go one-on-one with the keeper, tying things up at 12 minutes. But this Serie A finale was going out with a bang. We get a third goal not even 7 minutes later. Another Fiorentina one. Swiveling foot of Nicolas Gonzalez find the net. Like I said, putting Fiorentina out the second time in the match. And they were looking to go on a counterattack, but they'd give it away to Giorgio Scalvini, who shot from range, had enough power to beat the keeper. Game tied at 2 only after 32 minutes. And late in the first half, Fiorentina would go on the attack again, and after the ball reenacted a pinball machine, the ball would come to Bellotti, who scored one of the easiest goals of his career, and his brace, with basically the last kick of the half, gave Fiorentina a 3-2 lead in the halftime. No goals in the second half as Fiorentina end their season going on the road and beating Atalanta 3-2. Big news for Italy fans, though. Near the end of the game, goal scorer Scalvini appeared to injure his knee, which could be big for his chances of playing for Italy in the Euros this summer. Early talks are already saying Scalvini will miss the entirety of the tournament. It was also the last Serie A match for referee Daniele Orsato. The Italian official announced he would retire following the European Championships this summer. That final didn't really change anything in the table. Atalanta still qualified for the Champions League, finishing in fourth. They had a chance to surpass Juventus for third, but finishing top four is a pretty successful season for the club. Plus, they won the Europa League, as I mentioned earlier. Fiorentina finished 1 point behind in eighth place. In eighth place, will play in the Conference League again next season. They're probably hoping for a better result after losing back-to-back Conference League finals. They'll be hoping for some kind of trophy. I got to mention La Liga, too, with these last fixtures. It's the last bit of European footy. The La Liga season's already wrapped up, but man, what is going on with La Liga, too? It's so delayed. We know Granada, Almeria, and Cadiz are all getting relegated from La Liga. We just didn't know who was getting promoted. The only team clinched promotion was Valladolid, and they went on the road and lost 2-1 to Tenerife, which opened the door for Lejeune, who hosted Elche and defeated them 2-0, clinching the La Liga title for them. They take first in the division and join runner-ups Valladolid in the promotion to La Liga, which sets up a promotion playoff battle between teams 3rd to 6th. First leg of those matches taking place June 8th and 9th, with Oviedo hosting Eibar, followed by Sporting Gijon hosting Espanyol. Second legs taking place Wednesday and Thursday, June 12th and 13th. The winners of those semifinals playing in a 2-leg final to see who gets promotion to La Liga. First leg, Sunday, June 16th, and second leg, June 23rd. The second division Spain really stretches their season out. The European Championships first match is June 14th, so they'll be continuing to play into that tournament. Hopefully there's not a lot of players on these teams involved in that tournament, but we'll see what happens. And throughout Europe, you'll be seeing lots of international friendlies in the next bit as teams build up for those tournaments I mentioned. mentioned. This past weekend, I'll mention some MLS briefly here in North America. We had some big matches. The former Barcelona trio of Messi, Suarez, and Jordi Alba each scored to preserve a point in a tough game with St. Louis. Inter Miami still lead the Eastern Conference, but have played a few more games. And they're going to be without some key players over the next few games, as players will be leaving their clubs to play in the Euros or the Copa America. Like I said, these tournaments are just a few weeks away. And obviously, the biggest piece for Inter Miami and the MLS is Lionel Messi leaving to join Team Argentina. Other big games from around the league: New York City hosted San Jose and came back to stun them 5-1. The game was tied at 1 with 80 minutes to go. Then the home team scored 4 goals in a span of 15 minutes, including adding time. But a hat trick by Alonso Martinez after the 85-minute mark is just nuts. What a win for them. New York Red Bulls held on to win 1-0 over Orlando City. Chicago beat LA Galaxy. Minnesota won 3-1 over Sporting KC. New England Revolution went on the road and beat Nashville 2-1. LAFC won a tight one over visiting FC Dallas. Real Salt Lake laid the boots to visiting Austin, beating them 5-1. They've been playing some good footy lately. The Vancouver Whitecaps got a stoppage time goal winner by Damir Krelic to take the 2-1 win over Colorado. Charlotte went on the road and beat Atlanta 3-2. Other fixtures this weekend ended in draws. TFC went on the road and drew 2-2 with DC United. Philadelphia and Montreal each went a man down in their match, and they'd finished 2-2. Portland and the Houston Dynamo also played to a 2-2 draw as well. I mentioned how Miami is tops out east, and the West, Real Salt Lake sit atop the conference. Big part of that is their striker, Christian Arango, leading the MLS with goals with 16. Christian Benteke of DC United, former Premier League player, sits second in the league with 13. And a tie for third place with Inter Miami teammates Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, both players sitting at 12 goals. But like I said earlier, you might see some big names missing in the next bit as teams represent their countries in some upcoming tournaments. Major League Baseball, the biggest talk over the past weekend has been the integration of the Negro League stats and the Major League Baseball stats, incorporating more than 2,300 players after a 3-year research project. This changes the rankings a bit on who holds some of the all-time records. Josh Gibson became the new batting average leader with an average of 372, surpassing Ty Cobb's 367. Gibson also became the career leader in slugging percentage and OPS, moving ahead of Babe Ruth, and I think this is fantastic. Long overdue, but I was surprised to see how much backlash this is getting. I mean, I shouldn't have been surprised, but hate still catches me off guard here and there. And the people hating on this decision, I'm like, why? These players played in another league, not by choice, but because of segregation. People are saying, oh, well, they didn't go up against Ty Cobb or any of those greats. It's not because they didn't want to, they weren't allowed. You could say the same thing about some of the Negro League stars. Maybe Ty Cobb and them couldn't have matched up against some of that pitching or any of those players. We'll never know because we can't repeat it. And honestly, I think this is kind of awesome. Ty Cobb, you know, if you look up his history, not just his baseball stats, but if you look at how he treated people of color, I am so happy that someone of color has passed him in the record books. That must have him just, whew, I love it. But we'll go to some games that, games played on the diamond, starting with the Toronto Blue Jays. Sure, last episode I gave them some guff for their performance in Detroit, but the Blue Jays went into Chicago to take on the White Sox and look much better, sweeping the 3-game series in Chicago, then returning home to take on the Pittsburgh Pirates. But the Jays also unveiled their City Connect uniforms. I mean, I don't mind them in comparison to other teams too. I think they look pretty cool. Game 1 against the Pirates was all about pitching. Both teams were doing great, and this game would need 14 innings, where Davis Schneider would hit a 2-run walk-off home run to secure the win. Game 2, all Pittsburgh. They got to Kikuchi, got to him early. Jays did little to respond. Pirates won big, 8-1. The rubber match was pretty wide open. It had a different look to it, probably because it was the first time Vladimir Guerrero Jr. played at third base since his rookie season back in 2019. The move seemed to spark the Jays a bit, but either team looked like they could take this one. The Jays did take a 5-3 lead into the 9th, but former Jay, Rowdy Tellez, brought in a run, his 4th RBI of the day. It was a 1-run game, but Yimi Garcia would strike out Bay to secure the win. Big week for the Jays as they swept the White Sox, beat the Pirates 2 out of 3. We'll really see how good this Jays team is as they host the hot Baltimore Orioles in a 4-game stand. The Jays then head out west after that to take on the Athletics, but that Orioles series will be big. The Jays also announced that pitcher Jordan Romano has been placed on the 15-day injured list with right elbow inflammation. Looking at the Jays division here, the AL East, the Jays still in the basement, but they're tied with the Rays and only 1 game back of the Red Sox, so Hopefully they can try to get out of the basement here. The top of the AL East has really increased their gap over the three teams mentioned there. The Yankees have a 3-game lead over the Orioles, and both of those teams are continuing to win. That's again why I put so much emphasis on the importance of that 4-game series between the Jays and Orioles. If they could win or even split that series, it should help them out big time. Going to the American League Central, the Cleveland Guardians continue to play great baseball, leading the division. 4-game lead over the Royals, 6-game lead over the Minnesota Twins. All three of those teams I mentioned have been doing pretty well this season, even though Kansas City's struggled a bit lately. The Tigers hovering around the 500 mark, and not a very happy situation for them, is the number one overall pick of the 2020 MLB draft, Spencer Torkelson, was sent down to AAA for assignment. He's only been hitting .201 to start the season. And in the basement of the division, the Chicago White Sox are losers of 11 games in a row, including that sweep by the Jays. Wrapping up the American League in the AL West, the Mariners lead the division as the only team still above 500. The Rangers are hovering around that 500 mark, but the basement's full of the litter of Astros, Athletics, and Angels as they all continue to struggle, especially the Angels. Looking like another disappointing season for them, which is a nice segue to the National League and the NL West. Former Angel Shohei Ohtani and his LA Dodgers continue to lead the division, getting over their losing streak they kind of dealt with earlier here. They still have a big gap over second place San Diego Padres, and when the Dodgers are clicking, there's no one better. San Francisco Giants and Arizona Diamondbacks still close in the standings, while the Rockies are still in the basement, even though they have pulled off a few wins recently. And in the NL West, the Brewers still leading the division as the only team above 500. The surging St. Louis Cardinals are closing in on that 500 mark, and they've been playing really great lately. Contrastly, the Chicago Cubs have been slumping, have been passed by the Cards in the division. The Pirates and Cincinnati Reds are close in the standings, and both have a lot of optimism going forward with their young talent. I know we didn't get to see rookie pitching stud Paul Skeens going up against anyone in Toronto, but his next start is slated for this upcoming Wednesday against the Dodgers. Ohtani against Skeens, that's going to be must-see TV. Going to the NL East to wrap up this, the Philadelphia Phillies still have a big lead in the division, 6.5 games over Atlanta. The Braves, you got to give them credit, though. They're still battling despite the injuries they've been dealt this season. The Washington Nationals continue to hang around the 500 mark, while the New York Mets are floundering a bit and dropping in the division. Things look pretty bad when Jorge Lopez kind of freaked out on the mound, throwing his glove, losing his mind, saying how he's playing for the worst franchise in baseball, but he later clarified, was misheard, he's being the worst teammate. Regardless, the Mets are in trouble, and it's not looking like they're getting out of it anytime soon. Miami Marlins are still in the basement in the NL East. They've shown they can win games, well, minus those last 2 games against the Rangers, where they were outscored a combined 13-0, but lots of baseball to be played here. We'll go from one swinging a bat to one swinging a racket, going to the clay of Roland Garros for the second major of the year, the French Open. As the tournament has gone on, we've seen some great matches, some that have gone the distance too. And on the men's side, I must admit, I had some wishful thinking Canadian Felix Auger-Aliassime would have a shot against Spanish star Carlos Alcaraz in the 4th round, but Alcaraz showed why he is so highly praised, beating the Canadian in straight sets and advancing to the quarterfinals. But still excited on the growth of Auger-Aliassime. He's getting in the 4th round of this tournament is big. And some other big 4th round wins: Dimitrov winning in straight sets over Hurkacz, Jan Sinner beating Mutet in 4 sets. Some other big names left to play in the 4th round, including Novak Djokovic taking on Francisco Cerundolo, Daniil Medvedev taking on Alex de Minaur, American Taylor Fritz taking on Casper Ruud, and Alexander Zverev taking on Holger Rune. On the women's side, a few wins via straight sets. Iga Swiatek didn't even give up a point in her win over Anastasia Potapova. American Coco Gauff dominated Chacioretto in straight sets. Marketa Vondrousova, Ons Jabeur, they both won their matches in straight sets as well. In a battle of Alina's, Rybinka defeated Svitolina in straight sets. Jasmine Paolini needed a 3rd set to beat Eliana Venezia. American Emma Navarro and number 2 in the world, Aryna Sabalenka, were still duking it out at the time of recording of this episode. And Gerachieva is still yet to take on Mira Andreeva in their 4th round matchup. Lots of tennis broke down with some big matches on the horizon. We'll have a champion by next weekend, so next episode we'll be saying who won this shit. We go to boxing quickly for the big matches taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It's brought back like a Survivor Series vibe of my youth here in wrestling. You had an event where two of the world's biggest boxing promoters sent their best take on the other's best. Frank Warren's group taking on Eddie Hearn's, a 5-on-5 boxing series. This was dominated by Warren's Queensberry side. First, Willie Hutchinson defeated Craig Richards, unanimous decision. Nick Ball went the distance with Raymond Ford, and Ball would win by split decision. The first fight that didn't go the distance had two undefeated boxers, Hamza Shiraz defeating Austin Williams via TKO in the 11th round. The Brit had knocked the American down late in the 10th, and the ref was forced to call it in the 11th. The biggest fight of the night was supposed to be between Dmitry Bivol and Arthur Beterbiev, but the latter had to back out of the fight due to a knee injury in training, so Bivol would take on Malik Zinad, and Bivol showed why he's one of the best boxers in the world, forcing the ref to stop the fight in the 6th round. Daniel Dubois bloodied up the face of Filip Hrgovic before the ringside physician had to call the fight, saying, like, you can't even see, man. Ended in a TKO in the 8th round. Then the biggest fight of them all featured the biggest dudes of them all. Jilly Big Bang Zhang took on Deontay Wilder, and after Zhang had Wilder backpedaling, Zhang connected with another right hand, knocking Wilder to the floor, ending the match. Huge win for Big Bang. Another tough loss for Wilder. His 4th defeat in his last 5, potentially his last high-profile match for him. Gotta mention UFC 302. It was going down in New York, New Jersey. In the prelims, most of the matches went to distance. Came down to judges' decision. Almeida did defeat Romanov with a rear naked choke in the first round of their match, but every other match went to decision. The main card kicked off with similar fashion. Randy Brown and Zaleski Dos Santos match would go the distance. All 3 judges giving it to Brown. Looked like a well-deserved decision. Nico Price faced Alex Moreno for the 2nd time in their careers. And this match would also, you guess it, go to decision. Moreno started the match looking the sharper, but as the fight went on, Price would start to take over and pulled away. All 3 judges ruled in Price's favor. The win ended a 2-fight losing streak, giving him his first win since 2021. Big props to middleweight Kevin Holland and Michael Osekchik for getting the crowd going. We get a first-round stoppage. It looked like the Polish fighter would end it early, knocking Holland to the canvas. However, Holland responded and hit him with an armbar. The Polish fighter tried to escape, but as Holland extended, you could hear the pop, and you could see it just snapping. It's like, just tap, just tap. But it prompted Herb Dean to step in and stop the fight. A brutal scene where he just kept going. I mean, you keep breaking until the guy stops, right? That's what you got to do. It's your job. His 4th submission win in the UFC. The co-main event featured Sean Strickland taking on Paulo Costa, and this fight looked to go either way. Though Strickland appeared to be more the aggressor, the judges thought the same way, and Strickland won the match on split decision. And yeah, Dana White was not happy with one of the judges awarding Costa so many points in that fight, blasting him in the press conference after. The main event that everyone wanted to see was champion Islam Makhachev taking on Dustin Poirier. Islam started the fight out well, putting Poirier on the canvas, but Poirier put on a hell of a fight. Both fighters were very bloody going into the final round, and either way it could have, and to be honest, it could have gone either way. Until Makhachev got Poirier on his toes before bringing him down and ending the fight with a RC choke, causing Poirier to tap, and Islam retained his UFC lightweight belt. Some big golf events over this past weekend I have to mention. In women's golf, you had the U.S. Open, one of the majors taking place at the Lancaster Country Club in Pennsylvania. Very difficult course that put the golfers through it in a very up-and-down final round by all golfers. Japanese star Yuka Sasso hit a 268 in her final round to win the tournament at 4 under par. 2nd time she's won the U.S. Open in her career. Going to the men's golf, we go north of the U.S. border for the RBC Canadian Open, which was held at the Hamilton Golf and Country Club. Very rainy event where the leaderboard was constantly changing. We'd witness a weird scene that I can't ever recall seeing. CT Penn, his caddy Mike Fluff Cohen, was injured after slipping on the wet course. He got medical attention, but a fan stepped in from the gallery to caddy the next few holes for Penn, looking like a scene from Hunger Games where he volunteered as tribute. It was something else. What an experience for that guy. And for a second, it seemed like Canadian Mackenzie Hughes was in contention, even getting serenaded with an "O Canada" before teeing off on the 13th hole. But he would drop out of contention. And when it was all said and done, Scotsman Robert McIntyre would win the 2024 Canadian Open, his first PGA Tour win ever. So good on him. His 2 under final round was enough to beat out American Benjamin Griffin by 1 stroke. Few NFL signings to mention quick. The Dolphins signed wide receiver Jalen Waddle to a 3-year, $84.75 million contract extension, with $76 million of that guaranteed. And probably one of the more unique signings was the Buffalo Bills signing former wrestler and Olympic gold medalist Gable Stevenson. If you'd seen Stevenson in action, he's a beast. You have to think he's going to succeed in the trenches of the NFL line. Gotta mention the CFL. Its preseason's wrapped up. Regular season begins this week. Opening game is Thursday with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers hosting the Alouettes. Friday, you have the Calgary Stampeders hosting the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Friday, the Saskatchewan Roughriders going on the road to take the Edmonton Elks. Roughriders showed off one of their new alternate jerseys. It looks pretty cool, actually. And on Sunday, the defending Grey Cup champions Argonauts host the BC Lions. Fun week 1 to the CFL season as that gets going. Crazy week in sports, which brings us to our shorts. Last episode, the short was about the Toronto Blue Jays game I went to with my wife Caitlin. Such a great time. Awesome to witness the game. Awesome to witness the shithousery outside the stadium. Can't wait for the next one. There's some other shit we witnessed on our trip, like the flight from Toronto to Saskatoon. I don't know if the roads got closer, if I got bigger. Regardless, we'll go with that they got closer. But anyway, there's a solo dude passenger next to us. He was nodding off, kicked his tray, cup ice cubes flew everywhere. We didn't wake up for that. He'd figure it out. And then there were moments he must have been dreaming of doing the chicken wing, because every once in a while he'd be like, "Buff!" Hit me with a chicken wing in the elbow. I'm like, damn it. But you didn't want to wake him up for that. It wasn't much, but I was like, these seats, they're too close. Then once we land, you get outside Pearson Airport. We're waiting for our shuttle. That's where we saw a shuttle mob mentality. This woman parks in there, clearly is known for shuttles. I don't know what she was doing, trying to wait for somebody. She's like, haha, it's okay, teehee. And everyone's like, fuck that, ticket this bitch. Everybody was just getting into it. Mob mentality. A young girl was looking to ticket her. This woman was like, no, it's all good. And everyone's like, fuck that, ticket her. It was crazy. Don't enter the shuttle zone without expecting shit to go down. Then we get to our hotel and there's like a huge dance competition. So kids everywhere, full competition stuff, makeup. I'm like, what in the fuck is going on? Elevator looked empty at one point after we were coming out of the room. And I'm like, hello, as I come up to the elevator, like Miss Doubtfire. It's a kid standing in the elevator like, ah. I was like, oh shit, she probably has no idea who Miss Doubtfire is. Probably not. But the biggest thing was the constant visuals of the drunk dance moms. Dance moms are something else. I mean, there is a fucking show about it. But whenever my wife and I would sneak outside, she'd have a dart, we'd hit the vape, we'd hear from them miles away, I swear. But, I mean, that must be the reward for putting up with a dance competition. It's just getting shitty drunk. You could see all the dance dads sitting at the bar, heads down, thinking, man, what the fuck are we gonna have to deal with later? But yeah, there'd be issues with certain addresses with our Lyft drivers. It always worked out. We'd always get there. And I still remember the look on my wife's face when we went near the foyer to see if her food was there. She asked us, excuse me, you give my food? And the guy's like, what? He was definitely not a food delivery driver, so that was kind of funny. Maddie's Patty's Burger Shop, owned by Maddie Matheson. If you ever seen the show The Bear, he plays Fack. It was an awesome place, cool experience there, seeing some spoiled kid sitting there, and they're like, can you hold the dog leash? And she's like, I want ice cream. Where's the ice cream? She would not shut up about ice cream. Meanwhile, the dog is like rummaging her through the restaurant, gets caught up in people's legs and kicked, and someone's like, oh my, is this your dog? I'm like, nope. And then the mom was like, oh, that's our dog, he's so silly. I'm like, no, your daughter just ain't listening, son. But yeah, shit got wild. And then going to Niagara Falls, it was such a change of pace from the go-go constant moving of Toronto. Being the falls, you could just kind of chill. Going on the boat, getting that close to the falls, it was surreal. A bucket list moment. Got to enjoy with my wife, something I'll never forget. The following day, we were trying to get to the train early so we wouldn't miss it going back to Toronto. We hadn't had breakfast. My wife was sneezing a bunch when I know she gets nauseous. We got to the Via Rail station, Niagara Falls, and I'm like, she's going to have to throw up. She went to the women's washroom where there were kids, like, playing in the bathroom, nowhere to puke. So she ran out and she's like, fuck it, going to the men's, but the toilets are all plugged. She ended up running outside, throwing up a bit in the lobby. I see her throwing up. I'm like, oh shit. So I go to grab her paper towel from the men's room. I could see why she threw up right away. That was the nastiest stank ever. I almost threw up. So that was our last memories in Niagara Falls, leaving some puke outside the stankiest of stank stations. But it was a damn good trip. We can laugh about it now. At the time, it was like, oh, this sucks. But I can't wait for the next adventure. Thanks again for tuning in. Like I said, episode 64 in the books. You got the Stanley Cup Finals starting June 1st. You got the NBA Finals starting Thursday, June 6th. So I'm going to have to drop that NBA episode before then, previewing the finals, recapping what got us here, and talking about the WNBA because it is polarizing right now. People are hating on each other. Where's the love? Not there right now, but we'll get more to that in a bit. For now, thanks again for tuning in. Ren City out.